Hello, my friends, and welcome back to a Saturday afternoon discussion with me, your host, Carpo. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about being misunderstood. It's just something I was out there, I'd been cleaning up and organizing, trying to get the house ready, maybe to put up for sale, and it's been a process living here for 22 years. And anyway, I was just back there thinking about, you know, all these things in my life that all these dreams I've had and ideas I've had and understandings that I haven't ever shared with anyone or attempted to. These things that are what they call the ineffable, the unspeakable. And it just kind of becomes part of your life, the experiences you have. You say, well, and it takes you on a certain direction in life. You realize that everyone has their own path and finds their own direction that works for them. Hopefully, that's the goal, right? Just to find something that works for you. And I figure if you wake up every morning and you're not restlessly sleeping and you're not angry all the time and frustrated and you don't have a lot of negative thoughts, I think you're doing fine. You're probably doing pretty well. There are plenty of people out there who their whole thing is to criticize others, for example, because it makes them feel good because they get attention for it. For example, that's I've found myself in situations where I'm feeling pretty down, where I just feel critical, where I'll leave a negative comment on a YouTube video or two and be like, why did I do that? I stopped doing that a while back. I'm just like, okay, I catch myself because I'm observing myself. But back to the point here, as I was thinking about misunderstandings, I thought, well, I'm going to make a video and I'm just going to go off the cuff and talk about it, and entitled it, why do we feel misunderstood? And I quickly corrected myself. After analyzing that title, I was like, all right, I'm making an assumption here that by saying we, and I'm careful not to do that these days, because I know there's always at least one person out there who says, oh, I don't have this problem. I've never done this. I've never felt this way. And that's good if that's true. I highly doubt it. It's kind of like the balance of the imposter syndrome versus the ego, and how we can fluctuate. It's like a roller coaster. For most people I've talked to, life is like a roller coaster. You feel very confident about your path one day, and the next day it's just like, fuck, what am I doing? I should be doing this or that, or I could have made this decision. And it just comes naturally. You just let it flow through, you move on. And I've really come to terms with that part of myself, the critical part, And, but how we're viewed by others is completely a unique situation compared to how we deal with ourselves. So you may be able to, like I said the other day, quiet your inner voice, get yourself to a center and a state of calm, which I'll tell you other people hate. If you appear too calm and collected and happy, people don't like it. This is something that I really didn't understand, like when I was younger. I'd be like, why are people such jerks? A lot of people, they want to be happy. So they criticize people who are happy by saying they're delusional or their beliefs are wrong or whatever it might be. That's okay. Don't worry about what other people think, because that's probably the number one rule to, self-awareness, is just turn off that critic, the external critic, because you have enough of an internal critic if you're the average human. But when you do want to explain yourself to somebody, this is when we feel misunderstood. And so, I don't know if I finished up that thought about changing the title, but I was going to say, instead of why do we feel misunderstood, I'll title it, do you feel misunderstood? Something to that effect, because it's more open to how different people think. So most of the time in my life, I'll start off by my brother and I had a conversation yesterday. This is a perfect example. Uh, we were talking about intelligence, and just I'm not going to talk about any specific groups because we'll just say that what we were talking about doesn't matter. We were just talking about a certain group who has some really dumb thoughts and believes dumb things. And he's, you know, he was talking about intelligence and saying, well, you know, people are, these people are stupid. And I said, well, yeah, but there's different types of intelligence, because I always argue kind of from a place of love, but play the devil's advocate, so to speak, because generally I agree with him. But people, let's just say, how do I put this? I'll just say I paused it for a second. I don't usually do that, but I'm going to back up for a minute. In general, people mean well. Most people, I think. Most people have good intentions towards others and goodwill. If you're down at a neighborhood event or something, or a community event, most people behave and most people are kind. Very few people are really jerks to each other. The internet's allowed this whole new wave of, hatred and, spite. But it might be something that was underlying the whole time. I don't know. Or maybe it's just because we're delusional because we believe everything we see is real online. But I think most people out there, deep down inside, are good people, but we tend to believe really dumb things. And this might be off topic from being understood, but it's not. Because when I say dumb things, I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying they might sound outlandish or crazy. I believe a lot of things people might think are dumb. A lot of my spiritual beliefs, an atheist will just scoff at. But I'm not here to prove anything to them. I have no interest in doing so. I in my life have moved way past trying to justify anything that I believe. But that's also a problem, because when you want to explain yourself and where you're coming from, it's easy to just step away and just say, fuck the world, everybody believes what they believe, I'm just going to do my own thing, and kind of fit into your own corner. And being almost 50, I find myself getting kind of wrapped up in this sometimes. In other words, I will find myself just having this live and let live attitude, but when something comes up that's really important that I need to express myself on, and this is ironic because I have a YouTube channel where a lot of people say you express yourself well and you make good points. I'm just like you, okay? I cannot express myself well. When I stumble on my words, that's just making a YouTube video. I can just transfer my thoughts to something else. I can just move on to another topic if I want. But when you're talking to somebody in person, for example, and you're miscommunicating, you realize how important vernacular is. And that's why when I was talking with my brother the other day about that, I said, yes, there are different forms of intelligence, but you can be completely book ignorant. You can have a 5th grade level of education and become the leader of the free world, right? Hey, no offense, I had to go there. But it doesn't matter. Society tells you this is what you need to know to be productive or successful or whatever it might be. And what I was arguing with him is that intelligence isn't that important. If all the lights went out tomorrow, intelligence would be the farmer. Intelligence would be the Amish. Everybody would be going to the people who know how to work the land, plant seeds, and grow. People would have to educate themselves on something completely different. So the intellectuals today, and what I was pointing out was a small group of intellectuals. These are the people who will always talk about how many books they read or how high their IQ is. This is a small subset of folks, but it goes to show just this desire in society to believe that a certain attainment of one person's level of what's intelligent matters more than another. I was arguing with my brother a while back about somebody else. I was like, I think that emotional intelligence is far more important than intellect in the, I guess, like, for example, there's musical intelligence, mathematical intelligence. There's like 9 to 12 different types depending on which person you listen to. But we can all agree that different intelligences, benefit different groups in different ways. A tribe has no need for, you know, certain types of book smarts like we have in the West. So I'll move on from that. The point was that I agreed in the end that yes, I think one of the most important things that we can do in our lives is to educate ourselves and to have, enough of a grasp on the language to be able to express ourselves properly, because it's frustrating when we can't. I lose words all the time, I forget things. But every time I learn something, this is what I've always told my kids and anybody else that, misspells a word or doesn't know the name of a word. I'm like, every single time I would, as a kid, hear a word I didn't know, I would look it up in the dictionary. Yeah, that was pre-internet days, but now it's even easier. You can just Google a word. It's so easy to figure out exactly what everything means. And I guarantee you, if you teach yourself a word a day, you'll have a pretty good grasp on, the language. And being able to express yourself, that's fine. Now you have a grasp on the language. But in the end, it doesn't fucking matter, because when it comes down to the important shit, it's all in here, and there's no way to put it into language. It's the ineffable. So what do? How do we express ourselves the way we want to? Some people do it through art. Some people do it through music. Some people through poetry. Everybody's got their own thing. I do all of them. I play music. I write poetry, songs. And I try art. I'm not that good, but I've delved into everything. But I still really suck at expressing my true feelings and emotions. It's weird. It's something that I've always wanted to be better at, And so, doing a lot of the shadow work over the last few years, I've really come to terms with how much I've denied myself, because of my loss. Like, I never thought, of course, losing my father to cancer at 15 was painful, but I never used it as a crutch, right? I've said, well, I'm tough, I can move past it. But as you age, you realize, oh yeah, you were just putting up a wall to watching your dad literally die in your living room at, 15 years old. And then about a year and a half ago, my mom died suddenly. She hadn't been doing well, but it had only been a few weeks. Like, it wasn't expected, at all. And that kind of sucked, too. But also, I said, that doesn't, it affects me, and I was upset and I cried. But there's part of me that says, at least she wanted to die. And that was kind of a weird thing, because my dad was 42 when he passed, but my mom was only like 70, 71 or something. And she, I didn't want her to go. And the point was that during the time when she was alive, we got into a lot of arguments, but she was still awesome grandma and an awesome mom. And she'd come over and visit the kids and hang out and watch them while we were out of town. And she got very into conspiracies and other things at the end. She kind of blended in her spirituality along with a lot of David Icke and, Alex Jones type stuff. And so we'd have discussions, and I would say, yeah, I agree with a lot of these things. A lot of these are problems. However, I don't agree with this one thing. And then we get into this big argument, because to her, in her mind, she felt misunderstood, like I wasn't hearing her. And I realized she was overlooking all the things I did agree with. And a lot of people do this. I'm just using this as an example. A lot of people do this. You will agree with them on an entire, discussion, be like, oh, hell yeah, this is a problem. Yeah, this is a problem. Oh, but by the way, this one figure is wrong. And they just go off the handle. They just like can't believe you're disagreeing with them on anything. And so a year passes after my mom had died, and like half of the things that I didn't used to agree with her on, I was starting to understand that I still didn't agree with the way she portrayed it, but I knew where she was coming from. She had been towards the end into Rudolf Steiner and kind of a lot of theosophy, and I'd already been through that kind of phase of my life where I'd looked into all these things, Crowley and Blavatsky, and a lot of the occult teachings, and they're interesting, they're fascinating. But it took me until now in my life to bring all these different religious experiences that I've had personally with Eastern and Western gods and Jesus and everything else, to be like, what does this all mean? And looking at the charts and the levels and the astrology and tarot, and putting all these things together and saying, oh, now I have an understanding, but it's ineffable. I can't explain it. Many, 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 many people have this experience of gnosis. They just understand, but it's not able to be put into language. And I think that that's part of why the language has been expanding so much, over the centuries, to try to express more and more. But in English, we don't have words for certain things. Was it Schadenfreude or something? I don't know. There's certain terms that come to mind. I think there's a German word. There's German words for like everything. Like, for example, like the feeling of the breeze on a mountaintop when you've just climbed to the top, and I don't know if that has a word, but there's words for things that here we just kind of put together sentences. And that's just because of the age of the language. But the point is that words that point to experiences, like Sonder, that's a good one, look it up. All these words are better ways to express ourselves. However, and this is what I argued to my brother, I said the words are only as good as the people understand them. And this is where I disagree with a lot of the intellects of today, the intellectual mentality that the more language you understand, the better, people will understand you. And if the general population has a lower education level and they can only understand certain words, not that that's a bad thing. They have intelligence in different places. You have to be able to express yourself on a level where you're not being condescending to those who know fewer words. It's not dumbing down. It's making available. It's important. It's making information available to people. And this is why, even though I've been fascinated with Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, all of it, I really, over the last few years especially, have refrained from using terms like Satori experience. I'd rather say epiphany. I want to use Western terms because then it fits into every category. Because not everybody's going to be a Buddhist or a Christian or a Hindu or an atheist, or there are so many different belief systems, if you want to call them that. Each one has many individuals who kind of believe something different. And within there, we have to figure out what's important for us. And when we do, we have to be able to explain ourselves and express ourselves to the world. But the only way to do that seems to be to fit into a category. But that's changing. You have a lot of more kind of spiritual experiences, like ayahuasca ceremonies have exploded, but almost to a fault, because a lot of the people are doing it kind of as a experiment rather than an intentional journey to try to understand yourself. I think psychedelics are going to be a major tool in the future of self-understanding and insight. It's not always pleasant, but getting rid of, going to the gym isn't always pleasant, right? You have to get up and do it. It's the same way with kind of that exercising the mind in both ways. Exercising getting exercise and exorcising those quote demons within you. You know, we all have them, things that bother us about ourselves, things we want to fix, and to be able to get rid of that just takes a little bit of work at a time. And yeah, that's my ramble for the day. So happy Saturday. I got to get going and do some shit. So I'll see y'all next time. Be well.